Bibliomancy is where I pick a random book off a random bookcase, open it at random, find a random sentence, and reflect on what that randomness tells me. Well, today my fingers found the Parisian Jazz Chronicles by Mike Zwerin. Well, Mike Zwerin I think he's a musician as well as a journalist. Jazz scene of Paris in the 80s and 90s. The figures he knew, such as Dexter Gordon, Freddie Heineken, Miles Davis, Bob Dylan, Chet Baker, Wayne Shorter, Melvin Van Peebles, tells about his own life, his split allegiances to journalism and music, and to America and France, his battle for sobriety, a failed marriage, and fatherhood. I've read a lot of books about jazz. And I've read a lot of books about Paris. Paris back in the 40s, 50s, 30s, 20s. Lots of books about jazz. And I remember this book. I must go back and read it again. I say that every day. Must go back and read that again. I remember it as being a really beautiful book, which charted two of my twin obsessions, which is Paris and jazz. Interestingly, I don't actually particularly like Paris as a city. I mean, I've been there often enough and I like it well enough, but it's not being in the city of Paris that I love. It is the image of Paris, the myth of Paris, and the history of Paris, the great things that have happened there that really stir me. So let's see what Mike Zwerin has to say. I find a random page. What page am I on? I'm on page 68, a chapter apparently called Jazz in Siberia, which doesn't sound like jazz in Paris. The English name was chosen with an eye towards eventual exports of perfumes, creams, and balms to the West. The English name was chosen. I wonder what English name he's talking about. No idea. The English name was chosen with an eye towards eventual exports of perfumes, creams, and balms to the West. The importance of branding. The importance of finding a name which will somehow connect with your potential client base. Something actually that jazz, had to deal with. It was central to 20th century musical life, in some ways the most important music of the 20th century, and then perhaps became associated with being old-fashioned, and new names needed to come in as the music evolved. And so the use of the word jazz became sneered at sometimes, often I think in very racist ways. But yeah, the importance of naming things in ways that are attractive to people, never something I'm very good at in my own work and my own life. I've never been very good at marketing. One of the things I admire about jazz and jazz musicians, particularly when you go back to its heart among African Americans and then the diaspora from that musical heartland out to, where it intersects with other musics and so on. Something I've always admired about it is it's a very practical music. Lots of theory, it's very intellectual. John Coltrane could write the most extraordinary treatise about, chordal progressions and all of this stuff. But it's a music of being up in front of people and playing. It's practical. It's about putting money on the table. It's about survival. I've never been terribly good at that. Perhaps that's why I admire jazz musicians so much, particularly going back. Even today, it's, not a choice a musician makes if they want to become rich. That ability to name what you do in a way that makes a customer want to buy it. Never a strength for me. It's interesting just reading that sentence. Makes me reflect on where I can, as I so often have, learn from the jazz musicians who whose work I so revere and so admire, even when I don't necessarily like their music. Sometimes I listen to jazz and go, that's not my music. I profoundly admire the spirit behind it. And then, of course, you hear the jazz, and for me, the heart of it all has always been John Coltrane and perhaps Miles Davis, as he refused ever to be anything except an innovator. Before him, Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and Louis Armstrong and all these great, great, great figures. Perhaps I need to make my life more jazz. So here's the thing. This is the end of 30 days of reflection. I wonder what I've learned. I've learned something really several things, all of them obvious. One, I've got an awful lot of books on my bookcase, and almost all of them would merit rereading. Two, I've been quite interested in just reminding myself of the breadth of the subject matter and types of books I have: science fiction, horror, science, philosophy, history, art, spirituality, pulp novels, art novels, plenty of world literature. I'm blessed by having had the ability to connect with so many different strands of the human experience. But of course, the biggest reflection or the biggest realization is this: anything in every moment is an opportunity for self-reflection. I'm not saying it should be. I don't want to spend, this evening when I pick up a book, I don't want to pause after every sentence and go into a 10-minute self-reflection. I want to get on with reading the book. But in any moment, anything you read, any bird that flies overhead, any moment of silence, any drawing that you do, any sensation on your skin, any moment at all is an opportunity to self-reflect. Which makes me think, of course, about what I do as a coach and a mentor, something else I've never been terribly good at articulating. And it is in some ways to be the conduit by which someone I'm working with self-reflects. Maybe I should, but I don't say, I can cure you, I can heal you, I can tell you how to move forward. I don't think I can. And I think to claim so is arrogant. What I can say is, I know stuff. And because I know stuff, I can be the goad by which you self-reflect, the mirror in which you see yourself. I can be the book which you open and read a sentence and allow that sentence to help you realize things about yourself that perhaps you always knew but have forgotten, or perhaps you had never realized. Is that what we are, all of us, to everyone else? An ability, an opportunity, a stimulus for self-reflection. Is friendship, the being with someone and through that connection discovering more about yourself? Is that what art is? Landscape? Is it all about self-reflection? That sounds very narcissistic. Perhaps we could put it some other way. Is it all about growing every moment into a deeper, richer, and more complex version of our own unique genius? If you think I can help you in your process of growth and you would like to work with me, reach out. If you've watched any of these 30 days of Bibliomancy and you've enjoyed them in any way, let me know why. And whatever you're doing, have a wonderful time.